Cramer, Director Business Development, Security Ecosystem at Intel CCG, joins us today in this podcast to chat about the key benefits of Intel vPro and why it's an IT team's dream device. Todd, welcome to this podcast. It's so exciting to have you here today. Thank you for taking the time to do this with us. We know you have a very busy day ahead, but we're looking forward to this conversation. Before we dive in, why don't you take a couple of minutes to tell the audience about you and your role at Intel?
Oh, sounds great. A pleasure to be here, first off. And so I've been at Intel about 16 years, and I've worked in cybersecurity my whole career, even prior to Intel. But I work on different aspects of silicon security. And what I mean by that is different capabilities in hardware that we make available to the security ecosystem. So the security ecosystem, your Defenders, your McAfees, make use of these hardware-enabled features for different use cases that come to life for your PC. So that's my role, is to engage that ecosystem and work with the technical folks internal and the technical folks external to put those enablements or optimizations together.
Absolutely. So before we dive into the deeper features when it comes to Intel vPro and how it benefits larger IT teams, we'd like it if you can give us a brief overview, especially for the uninitiated. Intel vPro is something mostly everyone has heard about, but there are those certain particular features that not everyone is aware of. So can you just give us a brief overview before we dig deeper?
Sure. I mean, when you buy a regular non-vPro Intel Core processor, of course, Intel puts in security features, right? There's numerous features on all our platforms to help keep the user, their data safe, et cetera. But there's specific feature sets we put in for IT and SecOps organization that manage fleets, that help them manage and better secure that fleet that we put in vPro. So there's different kind of use cases that you're going to operate as an enterprise customer versus a consumer. And so we have something called Intel Hardware Shield. It's kind of a wrapper brand inside of vPro to identify the buckets. And there's below the OS security, things you'd expect around a secure and protected boot, firmware security, things below the OS. There's modern virtualization-based security, so things we put in to enable this new era of virtualization-based security that primarily OS vendors like Microsoft or Chrome put in place. And then we have a bucket called Advanced Threat Protections. And these are features designed for your antivirus or EDR or endpoint detection response vendors that are security software vendors that are deployed on top of fleets to really manage the bulk of security use cases for enterprises. So when you buy a vPro device, you get all those different features, and I think it's up to 23 different hardware features, if I have it correct, that are in there. And those are designed to work with specific layers of software to build that protected environment for vPro. So at a first blush, that's what you get with a vPro device on the security side are those features that work across the stack. And one more piece in the security industry, we like to say things are about defense in depth, right? So that you have security protections designed across the computing stack that is on the endpoint device, the virtualization layer, the OS, all of these things need to be in place because attackers are going to find the weakest link into your system. And so we build hardware security the same way to build that defense in depth across the layers, if you will.
Absolutely. So taking this a notch further, when it comes to the built-in features, how can you elaborate on how some of them help in this entire end-to-end comprehensive solution for an IT team? So when you choose Intel vPro, how can it enable an IT team in terms of, helping their team members drive performance, security, manageability, as well as stability, no matter where those team members or employees are working, whether remote, distributed, within the same organization, the same physical space? How does using this hardware help them kind of give that end-to-end better solution and support? Why does choosing this help them
Yeah.
do their job better?
Sure. And I think the first part is that, sometimes people think hardware security, complicated project, a lot of money. Not really. Intel is working with these vendors years in advance to create the features that we envision, help them build the new software to take advantage of it, and then put that in place. So it's really, nothing's completely out of box, but it's as close as you'll get. So when you buy that PC, all of these features are in there and designed to work. And really, it's just a matter of pairing the right security software, the right OS version with the right hardware generation of the PC, and you get these benefits, and the benefits are in different regards. So like with below the OS security, as your system boots up, right, there's a handoff between the firmware and the hardware and the OS to ensure that no malware is intercepted and taking control of the device before the OS protections are in place. And so we put a lot of features in place that those type of features are implemented with the OEMs, the Dell, Lenovo's, HPs, and they work in conjunction with their builds that they push out to IT so that you get that secure and protected boot, the firmware protections. That's one layer. And then the modern virtualization-based security, virtualization provides isolation in different use cases. So, well, for instance, if you're talking about signing in as a user, well, sure, we all do the two-factor PIN and sign in. Like, for instance, Microsoft has Windows Hello, right? It's a biometric based with your camera. You're able to sign in. And that security of the biometric credential that enables that is isolated and stored on a secure component of hardware and isolated with virtualization-based security, so attackers can't easily get into it. So when you do a Windows Hello sign-in on the proper device, your hardware's there to help isolating that credential from someone attacking it. And then that third layer of advanced threat protections, something like ransomware detection, right? That's a critical component for enterprises, and we built something called Intel Threat Detection Technology. And it actually takes machine learning and AI that we develop and looks at how malware executes on the CPU microarchitecture, where then the machine learning is able to figure out what's a valid process and what's a ransomware process on that device. So we're able to signal then as part of the EDR or the antivirus agent that, hey, this process looks like a ransomware attack. And then they determine with the data we give them, yes, it is, it isn't. So you get that detection efficacy assist for ransomware, and it's all coming from your PC hardware specifically. You could run that antivirus on a competitive system and you're missing out on the efficacy assist for ransomware. Those are just a couple of the use cases that come to mind, but I wanted to walk us through an example on all three of those layers. And again, that notion of out of box, right? You're just at that point understanding just to know the capability exists, making sure you've got the right generation hardware paired with the right software that's optimized for it, and then it just works and it provides your organization that better security, better performance.
Absolutely. And at a time where I think most companies across industries are generally, they have a distributed workforce today, and managing business data as well as ensuring better device security, and also, of course, protecting the data in terms of employee hacks. All of that is very important today. So, how do some of your security features, multi-layer security features, enable IT teams in this regard for easier remote management capabilities and
Sure.
access?
I could talk about just manageability features in vPro that are tremendous feature sets, but I'm going to stick to security. So, post COVID, where you had all these employee populations going remote, now they don't have the typical enterprise firewall, VPN, very targeted protections that keep the enterprise data and the user safe. Someone's now at a coffee shop or at home, and that raises the importance as what you've seen, these antivirus endpoint detection response suites. Those are the software packages that provide now, cradle to grave security for enterprise. And they're designed to bolster protections outside the firewall so that you have a security agent from a Defender or CrowdStrike that runs on that PC, but it's able to help authenticate the user and establish what's called a zero trust connection to SaaS apps. We all use cloud apps, right? So how do you get that remote user accessing securely a cloud app? And that's called zero trust access. And so the two parts of that is authenticate the user to make sure you know who they are. And that's a set of functions like that biometric password function I talked about. And then the other part is assessing the health of the device. And that's where the EDR comes in, because they're constantly creating a zero trust score to say, this particular device has a vulnerability on it, it has an active malware. They're scoring that, and we give them telemetry and integration and all we can from the hardware side so that they can establish that scoring and the health of the device that they can then pair with the authentication of the user and decide, yes, this is the secure, healthy device with an authenticated user. Give them access to Salesforce, give them access to our corporate information remotely. So that's how the shift has happened, and where this goodness that's in hardware helps make that a possibility for remote zero trust access of all these user populations.
That sounds very interesting. And when it comes to the types of industries today, especially who largely rely on Intel vPro devices, can you highlight more on that? How who does it really benefit? Who's been looking at these devices as a go-to solution for their IT needs?
Sure. I mean, and like again, vPro, being an enterprise class device with our best security and manageability, the same regulated industries you'd think about are high adopters of vPro: financial, healthcare, government. Even school districts another one, higher education, right? Because you see in the news, these ransomware attacks are disrupting police departments, the schools, places where they're not equipped to handle these type of attacks. So you want to make sure when you're buying your fleet, you're not, as a common mistake that I see is people look at security software head to head. They say, oh, what's better, my McAfee or my CrowdStrike or my Defender? Yes, that's a comparison to decide what core security software to run on the device, but you need to pay attention to the inbuilt hardware because many of those same vendors get better because we've optimized certain feature sets. So, if you're a school district, you're not a typical enterprise, but I would argue you would still want a vPro device because it's going to help keep you better efficacy against those ransomware attacks that are ravaging, those type of environments. So that's sort of one answer from the vertical standpoint.
When it comes to these recent attacks that you spoke about, which is on everyone's mind, I think you wake up any day today and there are like 10 news articles about something being hacked, someone losing money in certain scams, and it's crazy out there. So can you elaborate on some of the most recent ways in which vPro has, as a system, as a device, and their features, how they've protected the end users? And this is more in reference with all of these latest attacks that have taken the headlines of late: CrowdStrike, the Microsoft outage, and all of the recent ones. So why would having
Mm.
vPro, especially in these situations and in other situations across, regulated industries as well, how can it benefit the brand, the enterprise, as well as the IT team? Because it cuts their workload in half if the device takes care of itself.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I mean, just that recent incident that happened out there, there'll be more coming out, but Intel AMT from a manageability perspective has that, chip to cloud capability, even when the OS is down, to be able to remotely KVM, wake up the device, rebuild the image, reprovision that, all the type of actions that are needed. It was kind of always designed with that type of recovery in mind. And here we just had a very recent one. And so you're going to hear more and more from us and our partners because it was listed as one of the approved solutions to recover from those incidents. So, that's a ready example of Intel AMT and vPro's remote management capabilities. It's of high interest to SecOps organizations to recover from these attacks or failures as they go. On the other hand, some of these other attacks, the ransomware assistance piece that I talked about or others, our partners hold that close to their vest, right? They're not going to tell you exactly where it helped or not, but we do here, right? We know that, from certain partners, we're helping with hundreds of detections a day with our ransomware assist for just one security software vendor, or when they go head to head and do MITRE attack testing to see how they do against generic purpose tactics and techniques of cyber attacks, they'll tell us that our memory scanning was just an instrumental in helping discover fileless attacks and others. So we constantly hear that. And then the only other point I can talk about is the part where, sorry, distracted there. My daughter dropped in, but that we do document with our reports. We have IO Active reports and others, which are expert security assessment companies that have gone out and documented why vPro security and that defense in depth is different than competitors, right? And we did an attack surface study that said we reduced the attack surface as a whole 75% over 4 generations. So each generation, there's newer features like everything. And so if you bought a 4-year-old vPro device compared to a new one, we've closed that attack surface down because we're always getting better on that. And, some of those other data points, we hired SE Labs to evaluate the efficacy of that threat detection. They said it added about a 24% detection efficacy assist to your EDR software, at least the one that they used and tested. Well, that's meaningful. If you can get a 24% assistance just from the hardware itself, I think I'd want to have that as a PC administrator. So there's all sorts of those studies we have on the Intel site that you can take a look at.
Absolutely. When it comes to the age we belong, the age of AI, how do you see security enhancements kind of like changing the route or changing the game for end users? How is AI changing the future plans for your team and Intel? And how do you see it benefit end users in terms of not just the device, but in terms of the prompt that it can? Because not all end users know how to maintain their device, and you don't always have a
Mhm.
backup in place, or you don't know how to reach out to someone when you're a distributed member of the team, for example. So, how does AI kind of bring this together from the device perspective and end user perspective? How can it kind of like bring the
Sure.
two together?
Yeah, and this is one of the exciting new areas. We've been at it for about a year and a half. Intel coined the term the AI PC. And really, with our Meteor Lake and now approaching Lunar Lake platforms, are the first AI capable PCs. So, we have a CPU, and some vendors will try to run AI on that, but you are going to disrupt the user experience because that CPU is designed for all the compute you're doing in your daily work, your teams and all of that. Then we've had an integrated GPU, and that's where you can run AI. In certain parts of AI, you can use the horsepower of the GPU, but the brand new thing is the NPU, the neural processing unit. And what that enables for the very first time is a new class of AI algorithms called deep learning, are typically in the last few years only run on the big iron in the cloud. They're there used by these EDR vendors to help uncover, look at data, look for threats. Well, now that they have this new horsepower available to drop it on client, it opens up new use cases. First is you don't have to ship the user's data to the cloud for analysis. Keep that privacy for the individual or for compliance reasons right on the user's machine. That helps so much to be able to do your analysis right on the compute of the machine. The other is quicker latency, time to respond. You're not round tripping to the cloud. If there's action that needs to be taken because of a threat, you're able to have the AI figure out that there's a threat there, put a policy in place to stop that threat quicker, lowers cost. Everything costs money when you run it in the cloud versus the free compute that you get off of a user's machine that has already been purchased. And then the one I like the best is there's just entire new use cases possible with all the data that's resident on a device. You need all of that data and activity to actually find novel attacks, and you can't send all that data to the cloud. It's impractical. So you're putting AI now down on the machine where all the data is. They're able to detect new threats. So AI doesn't just mean a chat bot. It means, I call it AI for security. So we've worked with all these vendors that now are sort of re-engineering key features that today work in the cloud, and they're bringing those models down to client to help do things, detect threats, anti-phishing, deep fake protection, document analysis, whole suites of features and brand new features are now being created. So if I'm a company buying PCs and I say, well, okay, I had a free refresh 2 years ago. Why do I want to get this AI PC thing? Well, think about it. We're working with all these software vendors that have unique features that only work on an AI PC and help protect you as a user to be more secure. So really very rapidly here, even at this point, there's a tipping point where an AI PC has meaningful, better security than an older generation device, and you're going to want that in your environment.
Absolutely. Todd, I think this has been a very interesting conversation. Before we wrap up,
Okay.
if there's anything else you'd like to talk about when it comes to Intel vPro and why every IT team out there should consider it as a first go-to choice, let us know before we.
No, I'd say just where Intel does a good job of when you go to the vPro site or go to the AI PC site, you can see it for yourself across all of these different capabilities, whether it's security manageability, collaboration. We're there with the ISVs. They're telling their story about as excited as we are about this new AI PC paradigm. So, learn about these features, see the videos, look at the materials we have out there because they'll really get your understanding of what an AI PC is about its novel new experiences that you get and all those security things. So it's been great to join you, and I hope that was insightful.
Definitely was, Todd. Thank you so much. We'll definitely have you back again sometime soon, probably to talk about, the deeper aspects of Intel AI PC and the whole concept around it. But until then, we wish you and your team at Intel all the very best.
Great. Thank you.